Hey everyone, and welcome back to Bands, Beers, FPL. We've had a bit of a long World Cup break. What a World Cup, what a final! Great times, very enjoyable. Despite all the nonsense to do with Qatar, it actually turned out not too bad. But we're back to the main business, which is the most important thing. So yeah, if you're on here, follow us on Twitter. That's at Bands, Beers, FPL.
Well done, well remembered, and thanks for checking us out on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video and hit that big button.
And hit us some comments. Let's get some chat going. Tell us if we're rubbish. Tell us if we're good. Slag our picks. Slag my picks mainly. I mean, Danny's doing no bad, so you won't be slagging him. So just going to start off with a little bit of chat about GW17. So we've got the template picks that we've probably going to both the players that we think are indispensable that you're going to have to have in your team for a little bit of success. And for us, we both have certain players we both picked that we both quite like. And yeah, basically for what we're looking at, we have a kind of idea of these players that we think are our template. I know there's a kind of set template, but this is the template that me and Danny have kind of weirdly kind of conjoined on, but the players that we both really like. So starting off obviously in the goalkeeper side of things, we've got our the ever famous Ward from Leicester, who despite a rocky start has turned it around.
Yeah, Danny Ward. Who would have thought that? Like at the start of the season, whenever there was that debate, like the goalie Ward and Everson, or Ward as your backup to another keeper, that he's actually now a genuine shout to be your first choice keeper for the rest of the season. Seeing anyone that didn't have him before game week 17 has got to now have him. Like he was smashing in points before the break, like a 6, 9, 8, 3, 6, 11 after smashing out a 1-1, 1-1, 2-2, 0. So yeah, Leicester definitely picked up the form, and I think they're definitely starting to get a bit more solid defensively. Obviously got Newcastle and Liverpool next, which aren't very sexy on paper, but if you rotate him with another goalkeeper, you could just bench him for those 2 games, and then he's got some nice fixtures coming up. So for 4.1, like no wonder, like he's in all the templates, and he's definitely I can't even call him a backup goalkeeper now. I think he's just going to be a very well priced, rotatable goalkeeper, reliable as well.
I think it's just point about it. I mean, you know my feelings on Leicester towards just before that turn. I wasn't very keen on them. They just didn't seem to have anything going right for them, and then all of a sudden, they've completely turned it around, and I can't say any fairer than that. They've obviously done the business, and that's the best thing they can do. So I think defensively they look pretty solid. I had Castagna in my team before the break, but mainly down to Super Ward keeping those goals out. So yeah, easy one there. We 4.1. Nice rotational goalkeeper. Great one for us swapping in and out with another keeper of your choice, which we'll probably talk about when we get to our drafts. Defence wise, there's only one name that comes straight out this season that I would say everybody has to have, and that's Trippier, the bold trip. Newcastle looked a bit of a revelation, eh? What are you thinking about them?
Yeah, he's a must-have. I'm quite proud that I got on him in game week 1, 5 million. He's now almost up to 6. So there's just no question about it. I have seen a few people talk about maybe going without him and going with Botman, save 1.5 million, but it's just not worth it. Like, as we've seen in the first half of the season, even when Newcastle weren't keeping clean sheets, he was still getting points for assists. He got a 6-pointer there for a goal. Here they didn't keep a clean sheet, 5 points. Didn't keep a clean sheet there, 7 points. Another one, 7 points. So he's so reliable. Like when Newcastle don't keep that clean sheet, he's probably going to pop up with an assist or maybe even a goal. So don't even overthink it. Trippier's got to be in your team if he's not already, and don't sell him. Just don't.
And he's definitely he's one of my main bankers. Like you definitely need to have him in there. I think his performances have definitely shown that. Which brings us round to the next banker, and an old favourite, the old Cancelo from Man City. Can't see past him. I mean, that price is ridiculous, but what can you do for arguably now the best defender in the game? City have in previous seasons been a bit more solid, but I think this season they'll be hopefully back to their best going into the second half of the season. And not only is Cancelo good for the clean sheets, he can also get you an assist and occasionally he'll pop up with a goal. So I can't see by him.
Yeah, just exactly what you said. I know there is quite a few people that are against him now just because of this little run here. So only one return in 5, but City hadn't been playing particularly well. Obviously, the red card was a bit of an anomaly. So I still feel he's worth backing. A lot of people are shouting for maybe a Walker or somebody else just to save a lot of money, but it's not worth it because when you do get those big Cancelo returns, like if you don't have him, it's such a rank killer. So I just pay the money. Another one that I'm glad that we got on him quite early because didn't have to pay that higher price, but 7.4 I think still worth it as your main premium.
I mean, you saw me grimacing there when you mentioned that red card, but the less said about that, the better.
So, you just forgot about it,
I actually had, by the way. I think I've had quite a nice, the World Cup's been a nice separation for me, and actually I'd be stressed after that last week, which was horrific. Yeah, so the third choice is a bit of a kind of left fielder. I mean, I think I've seen him in a few drafts, but was an injury doubt, now looking like he could be ready to play. What are we thinking on the bold Reece James?
I think if he didn't have this flag and he wasn't injured before the World Cup, I think he'd be in so many more squads. And Chelsea's form before the World Cup as well. So if they'd won those 3 games, it'd be a no-brainer. I think the only reason it's putting people off is the flag. And Chelsea's 3 games before the World Cup, they lost to Brighton, Arsenal and Newcastle. Not great. But obviously James wasn't featuring in those games. Chilwell was injured as well. Fofana's been injured. Thiago Silva was in and out. Cucurella's in and out. I think Potter started well and just had a bit of a patch there. Things were going a bit tits up. So I think now the fact that it says knee injury, but I think that is just because he was injured before and there's not been any concrete news. But he played, I'm sure, in the friendly against Brentford yesterday. And we've seen him in training throughout pretty much the whole World Cup. So he's going to be fit. Question mark to me would be, so they've got 4 games in 3 game weeks because obviously Chelsea have got a double in 19. Don't see him starting all 4, but I certainly see him starting against Bournemouth and Man City at home, where Chelsea's form's strongest. So I think that's worth it because I think you'll maybe get a haul off him somewhere. I think he'll start 3 out of the 4, just what one of these away games it will be. And I also think, like, see if you get on Reece James now, that price, 5.8, is so cheap for him. See if he plays against Bournemouth and he gets an assist and a clean sheet, all of a sudden everyone's jumping on him. And then in a couple of weeks, he's 6 million. If he keeps playing well, he's going to be 6.1, 6.2. So I think now is a good time to get in on him at 5.8.
Yeah, definitely think Potter having a bit of time during the World Cup to spend with his squad is probably only going to help him. And I can see them turning the corner. I really hope that they start picking up a wee bit of form and just become interesting again. You know, we were talking probably about the missing man, Mason Mount, and some chat around him being favoured by Potter. So could be another one to look out for, but he's not in this template. But Reece James, definitely one that we both really like and one that we definitely think should probably be in or about your squad if you can. If you can't fit him in, then fair enough. But yeah, definitely worth it. All right, onto the midfield, and Pariah for me for the first half of the season made me pay for a wee bit towards the end. But Mo Salah, he has to be in. I can't do anything about it now. You know, he was my favourite last season. He's dipped a little bit this season. I was reading a thing today about if he's not had any penalties this season in the league, and if he'd had some penalties, you know, he'd be getting some kind of hauls for the past couple of game weeks. So surely now Liverpool going forward might pick up 1 or 2 penalties along the way. You're guaranteed points. He's arguably a secondary captain choice after the bold Haaland. So yeah, I think you have to squeeze him in there.
I 100% agree. Just what you touched on there about the captaincy point, like, so the debate just now is really Salah or De Bruyne as your big premium midfielder, and I feel like De Bruyne is the same price, or 12.7, I think. So if you're going to spend that on a midfielder, you want him to be captain material. But let's face it, Haaland's going to be your first choice captain every week, depending on who he's playing or if he's fit. But I feel like he's going to be the captain most picks. And if you're not going to captain him, if you're not confident in him, then you're probably not going to be confident in De Bruyne either. So you want to be, when Man City have got a difficult fixture, have someone good, reliable to fall back on, and that's going to be Salah. So I know his form's not been as amazing, but that's a good point you've talked about. Without not having any penalties, he's still returned 6 goals and 4 assists when Liverpool have been pretty terrible. They're sitting, 6 in the league or something just now. So it's not been the normal Liverpool. And then they've got Diaz coming back soon, Jota coming back, Darwin Núñez was hitting some form, Firmino's still reliable, Thiago Alcantara's back as well. So they're just going to get better. I think we're going to see a surge from Liverpool, and I would not want to go without Salah. No way. It's just too much hiding behind the sofa every time they play. So,
and believe me, that's what I was doing the start of the season. So yeah, I can totally agree with that. It'll be interesting to see how he gets on tonight as we are filming just before the start of the City Liverpool game. So it'll be intriguing to see how he plays there.
Look at his ownership just before you move on there, 32.9%. That is nothing for Salah. This time last season, he probably would have been 60%. 70. So many people are jumping off him. He's been brought in by 316,000 people, but he's also been sold by over 500,000. No, that's 5 million. Yeah, 5 million players have sold him.
Wow.
In that international break. So that is insane. I don't understand it. If you are a Salah seller and you're picking De Bruyne over him or whatever, comment, tweet us, tell me, convince me otherwise, because maybe we're missing something, but it just seems insane not to have him.
Yeah, and I think as well, when we were speaking before the World Cup, you made an excellent point about how you were picking after the World Cup, how you were reckoning that certain players who'd progressed to certain stages of the game you were avoiding. And obviously Salah hasn't played in the World Cup, so he's doing a bit of a rest. Surely he's going to come back and hit the ground running. Like, he'll want to prove everybody wrong almost as much as Liverpool fans will want him to do well. So surely he's going to be the one that comes back and does the business.
I think the majority of Liverpool's team are all fresh. Like, Firmino didn't go to the World Cup. Diaz and Jota will be back in January. Darwin Núñez didn't get out of the group stages. Obviously Henderson was away and stuff, but if you think about their attackers and their forwards, none of them went. The only one that really sort of went a bit further in the tournament was, Alisson in goal, and then Van Dijk as well at the quarterfinals. So I think Liverpool are pretty fresh. So worryingly, as a Chelsea fan, I think Liverpool are going to come out strong in the second half of the season.
Yeah, and as we know, Andy Robertson definitely wasn't at the World Cup, being Scotland fans. But we'll gloss by that. Almiron is our next pick. Absolute wonder star. Wish I'd got on him earlier when my mate who was a Newcastle fan told me to and didn't, but luckily got on him just before he started getting some really decent hauls. So quite happy to keep him in, especially at that price. I know that a lot of people are talking about accommodating players and fitting them in, but I think why not, man? I mean, Newcastle are on form. He continues to score. I think he's slightly overperforming, but you might as well stay on the train until until it stops. So why not take the chance, especially at that price?
Yeah, 100%. He's got to stay there for that price. Like, I've looked at a couple of drafts of my own and tried to take him out, and I just keep coming back because he's so cheap. Look, Newcastle have got some good games coming up, even against Arsenal. That's attractive. Alan Saint-Maximin's back and fit now, so if he's playing on the other side with Wilson and Almiron as the front three, like, there's only just going to be goals. Bruno Guimaraes is pretty fresh as well. He didn't play many minutes in the World Cup, got put out early, so yeah, it's all good signs for Newcastle's form to continue.
Yeah, I mean, look at those ICT numbers, you know what I mean? Like 6 of 286, 52 of 286, 3 of 286, 8 of 286. Threat, creativity, and influence. Like, he's definitely, you've got to have him up there. Like, he's gone, for that price, like, he must be the most, punching player kicking about, other than his teammate Trippier. So I definitely think he has to be in there. Finally, another one of our favourite budget players who's been a bit of a revelation this season, the bold Andreas, really good accommodator. He plays regularly, pulls numbers. Decent wee player. He's second in the ICT thing for creativity. So he's definitely worth having there just for that price. I mean, he facilitates everything else. You can get some decent players and using the money to save on him.
Yeah, I think something that annoyed me a little bit this first half of the season was I had him the whole time, and then I was dipping in and out of getting Mitrovic, and I was cautious of overcommitting on Fulham because I don't know, I just wasn't that convinced. I should have had Mitrovic earlier, but now I don't mind doing that. I think if you're going to go in on Fulham, this is the time to. They've got Palace, Southampton, and then a double game week against Leicester and Chelsea, who we know can be beaten. And then some tougher fixtures here with Newcastle, Tottenham, blah, blah. But that's when you could probably jump off like a Mitrovic or whatever. But Mitrovic out of this, Pereira for 4.6, the corners he takes, the free kicks he takes, he pops up with goals. Susceptible to a yellow card right enough, but you got to have him. Like, if you want to and have a budget enabler, don't go and look at Leon Bailey again. Like, it's got to be Pereira, it's got to be Andreas.
And I think, like in terms of like bench players, you just can't get any better than that. If he's coming off, he's more likely to. I mean, I'm surprised it's such a low ownership, especially at the price and what he's capable of. Like it seems a bit crazy to me. But yeah, really like him. So going into forwards, I mean, we don't really need to say much about the first, which is everybody's pick. I mean, I'd be doubt if what's that 83? I mean, who are the 17% that don't own him? Like genuinely, like what are they thinking?
Weird. I understand.
Yeah, he's
Man,
got
United fans, like die-hard Man United fans that play this game every season and don't pick any Man City players, even when they're streets above everyone else. That's got to be it.
I mean, or maybe Tottenham fans, like desperate to get Kane in their team, dropping them out. But I just can't see why you would go beyond him. Like, he's been insane, the numbers he's posting this season. I mean, don't get me wrong, like City haven't been the best, a few freak results before the World Cup, but there isn't a team out there that you'd be worried about City playing. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're capable of beating anybody on their day. So, yeah, he has to be in there. Okay, so second pick, we did agree a little bit on Wilson for a while, but you've taken him out, so we're going to go Mitrovic, which I think you're still dilly-dallying a wee bit on, but yeah, I think I like him. Again, another decent price, gets penalties, scores headers, scores goals against teams you're not expecting him to score against. He gets the returns, and as a sort of facilitating striker, there aren't much better, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I know you're saying I've been sort of like swithering on him. I think it's just it was the same as I just said, overcommitting on Fulham. But I think I don't, and he's on 4 yellow cards still. So if he gets 1 yellow card, he's going to miss a game. So if he gets booked against Palace, he'll be missing Southampton or whatever. Like, but I feel like you can just bench him for that week. I feel like I want him for this little run, the double game week. So say he avoids getting a yellow card, which is fully it could happen. Those are just really good 4 games over 3 game weeks. And like you just said, penalties, prolific. Fulham are on form in the top half of the Premier League, so hard to ignore them. So I can't. And then it's also the rank killer sort of thing, like I said about Cancelo. Like if you don't have him, I know his ownership's only 21, but I think that's going to soar, especially as we get towards game week 19. So I worry about not having him, and I don't think there's many better options in his price range. So he's going to be nailed into my team.
What I was going to mention as well, you mentioned the yellow card thing, that actually applies to Kane as well, apparently.
Okay.
Yellow, I think he's on 4 currently. If he gets another one, I think he's walking the same tightrope. So it's probably worth keeping an eye on that and keeping that in mind if which we're going to talk about, which is the premium debate. Yeah, so I find it quite interesting. That's our template. That those are the players that we really think that if you're going to, start a team for this game week and probably going forward, those are the players that are probably worth having in your team, or at least definitely bearing in mind when you're picking the team going forward. There are a few you could obviously bring in that we sort of swithered on, but we'll talk about them when we get to our draft. So let's probably start with your draft, Danny. I know you always put more thought and effort into yours than I do mine. So what are you thinking? Talk us through your team. Any unusual picks? I can see a few already. A few we want to talk about, probably goalkeepers as a good starting point. Cool. Talk me through Kepa being in your team.
Cool. Well, we've talked about a lot of these anyway in the chat we had, but Kepa is probably 90% nailed in this draft. I sometimes look at maybe going De Gea. There's a couple of other keepers in that price range that are slightly tempting, but I just think I know he's got this flag, but apparently he's fit now, and I just don't see Mendy getting back into the team anytime soon. So whenever Kepa was playing, Chelsea were doing really, really well. He gets injured, Mendy replaces him, and they lose 3 games. And then Mendy just wasn't that great for Senegal in the World Cup. So I feel like if Kepa's fit, it's a good run of fixtures, double game week. I know one of them's against Man City, but those games can be notorious for a 0-0 if Chelsea dig in. So there's clean sheet potentials all the way up here. And I just think for the price, 4.5, fair enough. If he doesn't play this week, cool. We've got Danny Ward that can play. If it goes 2 weeks and Kepa's not back yet, or Mendy's the number one and Kepa's on the bench, then fine, just keep him on the bench until the next wild card. We've all got a wild card now in January, so it's not a big risk, I don't think. I'm not going to be stuck with a bad goalkeeper or not playing goalkeeper for long. So for me, it's a risk I want to take. I think if he's going to be Chelsea's number one, he'll alternative very well with Ward.
It's an interesting, it's an interesting one. I did like Kepa originally. He had a bit kind of dip in form, but I definitely think he's an interesting goalkeeping choice. I definitely think that your thinking and reasoning is sound. My only worry again would be that Chelsea defence, how solid they've been recently. Can they carry that forward? But with players coming back, like Reece James and stuff like that, I'm hoping they again and Potter being able to spend time with them, that going forward they'll have stepped up their game a little bit as well. So yeah, I think it's definitely a sound show. So talk me through your defence. We've obviously talked about Cancelo and Trippier. I'm not overly, White's an interesting choice, but the two that really stand out for me there are Shaw and Pero. Talk me through why have you picked them. Shaw's an interesting one for definite anyway.
Yeah, White is just to get into the Arsenal defence. He's the cheapest option. I would prefer Gabriel, but we'll see. He might not stay in there. Shaw is just to get into the next 3 Man United fixtures. I think you said he's not played in the last couple of friendlies, but I'm assuming that's just him getting some time off from the World Cup. Like, he deserves it, and Malacia can play at left back in those friendlies. So I don't think when it comes to Premier League, Malacia is going to steal his place again. I think Shaw he's England's number one left back, so I think he's going to be in the game. So I feel like he takes a lot of set pieces. He does get assists. His form's not been amazing, but neither's Man United's. I did want Dalot. I thought Dalot was really impressive before the World Cup and during the World Cup, but he's got a foot injury now, as far as I'm aware. Or is it hamstring? I don't know. But Shaw was just the second alternative to that. So he's there just now, not nailed yet, but I'm keen on him. And Pero, whatever you call him, Southampton, I just like their fixtures. New manager, I think they had a couple of good results, did they? Maybe not. I don't think they did. So the form's not been that great. He's scored a couple of goals, got a couple of assists. For a 4.4 million defender with a new manager boost and these fixtures, they are particular, Fulham, Forest, Everton, Villa, Brentford, Wolves. I think he's almost nailed for that price. I don't really want to go to one of the 4 million defenders like Bueno or Patterson, really. So I think he's going to be my cheapest enabler.
Interesting you mentioned Southampton in terms of play, because obviously they've got a new manager, so you're expecting a bit of that new manager bounce, which would be good, especially for you. Looking at that, it's an interesting pick. The fixture runs, speak for themselves. I'm always kind of wary of Southampton because it's such a weird team, but I do like it, and I know he's very much capable of getting an assist, like you've mentioned. So
goals as well.
Yeah, definitely. He takes free kicks as well, I'm pretty sure.
Some of them, yeah. He's a left wing back, and they're playing a back five just now. So we love wing backs in FPL. It's the best thing to have in your team, really. So, I think he's in there. I've seen quite a lot of people going for Kyle Walker-Peters. I don't think he's a bad pick either. Playing at right wing back for Southampton, but Pero is the one that I'm after. I'm going to keep him. He's 90% in there as well.
I mean, that ownership 0.6 is pretty impressive. Talking about midfielders, I noticed a name in there which I didn't see before, and I'm quite intrigued by, because obviously you're a Martinelli diehard. When the hell did Saka appear in your team?
I know this is just because I've not made these moves yet. So Saka and Foden are going, and probably Solanke, 99% Solanke as well. The only reason I haven't moved yet is because if I change my mind, I lose a bit of value. Right. I'll lose 0.1 for Saka if I take him out and bring him back in. 0.2 for Foden because I've owned him for a little while. So Saka and Foden are not going to be in the draft. I could have had this a little bit better prepared and actually had them sitting in there, but that's going to be Martinelli definitely coming into my team. And we don't even need to talk about him that much. We know he is so good for his price. He's potentially going to play through the middle now with Jesus not there. I know he's not on penalties, but Martinelli's just my pick for there. And then the other position is likely going to be going to Rashford. So if I had this would be my current draft. This spot is still maybe up for debate depending on what budget I can squeeze out. It's likely going to be Mitrovic and then somebody else in here, maybe, I don't know. But going back to midfield, these are the two then. Martinelli and Rashford. It's not Saka and Foden. I'd love to keep Foden. I think I would. I think he showed such good form in the World Cup, and before the World Cup, he was obviously in and out of the team towards the end. But I'm going to give it a couple of weeks, and I know Foden's not starting tonight against Liverpool. I just want to see how things go with City. I think there's other fixtures there to be targeted in the next couple of weeks, particularly Arsenal and Man United. I'd really love to get Bruno in, but we'll see. But yeah, Foden is one that I'd love to still hang on to. I just don't think I can squeeze him in.
I kind of worry about Foden mildly, like we spoke about this before. Like Pep seems to have swung away from him a little bit, and Pep pendulum. He was an absolute starter pretty much every game, and then all of a sudden a lot of kind of substitute appearances, which isn't ideal, especially it caused that whole ruckus when both him and Haaland didn't start that game. So I think I'm wary of Foden just purely based around that. When he is nailed on and he does play, he's definitely the one that you would want in your team. But who knows what's going to happen with City going forward? That's probably one to watch. And like you say, Rashford, who we both like, is that kind of enabler that if you get him in, he's running at the same price point. Is he the same price point, or is he? No,
he's much cheaper. Yeah, he's only 6.7.
Yeah, so you save a bit of money with him. I think we both like Man United. I think Ten Hag is definitely turning things around a little bit. They look a bit more solid. Rashford tends to play well for them when they're on form. I'm looking forward to seeing them without the overbearing weight that is Cristiano. So it should be interesting. I definitely think they're worth having at least one of their midfielders in. We spoke briefly about Bruno. I know you really liked the idea of having Bruno in your team. I actually really like Bruno as well, but it's just a case of waiting and seeing with Bruno and maybe how well he does over the next couple of games. If he starts playing in the same kind of form and vein that he did before Ronaldo joined Man United, then surely he's got to be a no-brainer in your team. But yeah, for the moment, I think Rashford is probably quite a sensible pick.
Yeah, to me, I really want Bruno on my team just because of the free kicks, the penalties, how good his form was in the World Cup for Portugal. It's just his price, man. That's 3.1 million more between Bruno and Rashford. And Rashford's World Cup form is brilliant. He scored a belter last night, I think, in the Cup. So he's continuing that form. So I can't stretch to that 3 million. I can put that 3 million elsewhere. So reluctantly, can't go for him. I'm going to be going for young Marcus.
All right, and then up front, we already spoke about the main man himself. You also like the Portuguese Mad Dog. What are you thinking with regards to Darwin? I know I had him in my team briefly before the winter break. We spoke about him as well. When he is on form, he's a great player to have in your team, and getting those kind of holes that he has been picking up slightly more recently. What's your thinking about having him in your team?
I think I'm just going to trust Liverpool. We've talked about Salah and why we want to have Salah and stuff, but I do really feel that Liverpool are going to come back strong. And Darwin, whenever he was playing, he's been getting the goals, 5 goals and 2 assists, and he missed 1, 2, 3, 4 games out of 15 there because there was one miss, wasn't there? There was a game week cancelled. So out of 15, so that's 11 games. He's returned 5 goals and 2 assists. That's decent for someone that's new to the league. Scored 2 in a friendly against AC Milan last week. Looked really sharp. So it's just for that price. See if Gabriel Jesus was fit, you'd be picking a 9 million striker. So I feel like it's fine to have that slot, and there's no one else. If we just look here, this is the if I just go to transferred in. Tony is getting transferred in by so many people, but I just don't trust Brentford's form. I can't get to Kane, and I don't really want to get to Kane. Wilson we can talk about, but I just feel in that sort of price range, for me it's a no-brainer. I just want to go for that Liverpool, and it's flexibility as well. So if he blanks in a couple of games and I get fed up with him, I can easily move him on to Kane or Wilson or something, just with 2 transfers it take to get to Kane. But there's just flexibility there rather than chucking in someone cheaper like Tony or Martial or whoever and spreading the money into midfield. I just think I like to have that price point in there just to show some flexibility, and I think he will do well. I think he'll start strong again.
Cool, I like it. We've also already spoken about Mitrovic, so we can probably leave it at that. I mean,
that's the current draft anyway. Yeah, definitely looking like that. It's 2.4 in the bank, which could get me to go from White up to Reece James, that we talked about. Probably would do that. But the rest of it's pretty locked in. Happy.
Cool. I like it. Good first draft.
You see that? Did that switch over okay? Aye.
Aye, perfect.
So,
yeah, so
differences have we got? We've got a few, but not many.
Yeah, because we spoke about the template aspect. Like I think we've got that same spine of the team with Haaland, Salah, Almiron, Trippier, Cancelo, Ward. Goalkeeper wise, I've gone for De Gea. Just in a minute, I may change it up, but I like how defensively tight Man United were looking before the break. I think that they're fairly solid, and I think that tends to be a hallmark of Ten Hag's play. Decent price point, so yeah, I think he's probably my pick for that. Going forward, we spoke about Reece James, got Trippier, we spoke about Cancelo. Odegaard is only in there as a placekeeper at the minute. I'm kind of swirling between him, Saka, or Martinelli, which I think most people will be the same depending on how much money you have in your bank. People obviously probably want to get Saka in for taking penalties and things like that. Martinelli, the obvious choice, but I've seen quite a few people talking about Odegaard. My brother's obsessed with him, especially in the few recent sort of hauls he's had. So I do like the look of him. I probably will change it. It's still a rough draft. I think I've just got him in there as a placeholder. Marcus Rashford, we both talked about, both like. Mitro have talked about, Hamill talked about. Wilson, it's a no-brainer for me. Like I really like having that tripled up Newcastle. I think Newcastle are the team in form. Hoping that form continues. Can only see Wilson scoring more goals. A pretty plumb fixture against Leicester. He should, hopefully, fingers crossed, get a couple. The only thing I'm worried about there is maybe the injuries, which is something that, on a bench, Ward, obviously, Andreas, obviously. Castagna, I've just held him over from end of last season. I think he did quite well for me, and I like the fact that Leicester do seem to be defensively tighter than they've been, getting some of those really good clean sheets. And then the troll, I've got him in here purely just because I think Villa are going to turn the corner. I think Mr. Good Evening is going to bring them forward a little bit and make them a bit more of a sound team. And I like Digne. Cash is the other option, but it's if it's a straight up bum fight between the two, I think Digne's got more chance of getting you attacking returns. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, Villa's interesting. We haven't spoken about them at all, but I was thinking about that. Like they've got Liverpool and Spurs in their next two games, so they're showing as difficult games. But I feel like they've got goals there. I don't see they've got clean sheets in those two games. So I think for me, I like the thinking. I think Villa are going to start playing well. But I was even looking at Danny Ings whenever I was sort of mucking about with squeezing in different strikers. When I was trying to get in Fernandes, that's what I was looking at. And Danny Ings, he's really sticking out. Like I feel like he's going to nail on that centre forward position. But there's other strikers in that price range that maybe just take priority for me. So, but no, I like the thinking. Dean's just a troll, man. Like he always looks like an attractive pick, and I never get it right with him. So,
let's face it, we both know. We know exactly what we're getting into and we let ourselves in for doing it. For a fact in about 2 weeks' time I'll be greeting about it. Well, maybe not 2 weeks. I don't think I'll play him for 2 weeks, but the third week I reckon when I do, I'll probably get down stung by it. Again, it's just the first draft, so probably not going to keep him in there. Also, you've put together quite an interesting little list of some of the differentials that you're thinking interesting. So we've already talked about a few of them, mainly being Kepa, Shaw, Fernandes, Wilson. Talk me through a little bit about players like Meslier for Leeds as your goalkeeper. You've mentioned you like look at him. 2.2% owned, quite interesting.
Yeah, just the really low ownership, and I know from last season like how good he was for save points. It was just a temptation. Like if I was trying to think outside the box, I think for that price I would still go for Kepa. But if you're anti-Chelsea or you're maybe going with Reece James and you don't want to double up in the Chelsea defence, then I think for a 4.5, ignore these two fixtures, you can play Danny Ward. Leeds will get some clean sheets in around here. I think they're starting to get a bit better, and he, even whenever they don't keep a clean sheet, he could still get you a 3, 4, or 5 pointer because of his saves, I think. So yeah, I do quite like him for that ownership and that price.
Okay. Zinchenko of Arsenal,
I love him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan, but how's he looking fitness-wise?
So he's flagged, which is annoying because he wasn't a couple of weeks ago when I started looking at tinkering, and he was nailed on in my team. I just think for 5 million, he's a little bit cheaper than Gabriel and Saliba, more expensive than Ben White, but we know he plays as an attacking left back and sometimes plays in midfield. So he's been injured for most of the season, but see when he wasn't, 12 pointer, then 2 sevens, and then he's injured again. So he's a wait and see. If he gets fit and nails down his place again, I want him in my team for, if they're going to push for the title, he's going to be important, and I think he's going to get assists and bonus points and clean sheets and stuff. So I really like him.
From game week 22 onwards, it's a no-brainer. I really think that it's a great shout. Rodrigo for Leeds, captain, fantastic, playing really well for them at the start of the season. Then took that little injury. Thoughts on that?
I think he can still get goals even against Man City. Good fixtures coming up, really good fixtures coming up. He's back on form, 7-6, 7-13. He's scored 5 goals in 4 games. And then at the start of the season, he was banging them in before he got injured, his shoulder injury. So it's just whether you've got a free midfield slot and that price, because there's a lot going on in that midfield. But I really want to try and squeeze him in as well. Maybe that 2.4 I've got in the bank, I can upgrade Andreas and just go with one film, maybe.
Yeah, and finally, the bull Brennan Johnson for Notts Forest.
I always talk about him. I think he's creeped into my thoughts a couple of times just because of his price. He started at 6 and he's down to 5.6. He scored last night, penalty. He's still on penalties. He's nailed. He's playing 90 minutes most of the time. He's only got 2 goals and 1 assist, but that's because he's playing for a pretty poor team. But they've got games coming up that are ones they can get points in. They need points, and they've shown they can get them. They beat Liverpool. So I think if you're struggling putting your money elsewhere, like me, try to get Fernandes in, that was a shout. I really like Brennan Johnson for that price. Don't need to play him every week, but when you do, there could be points in there.
Cool. And then finally, just for a quick rundown, what's your thoughts on the freemium debate? We both have Haaland and Salah. Is it worth getting that third slot covered? Having Kane, Haaland, and Salah. What do you think about that?
Oh man, I struggle with it. I've played with it, but Kane, I've loved him. I've owned him for a bit for the first half of the season, and he's so reliable. But it just mucks up the rest of the team too much. I always like to have a solid bench, and especially around this time of year, players get rotated. They're tired from if they've been at the World Cup. It's just a lot to play over 2 or 3 weeks. So, and there's cup games. FA Cup starts in January. So I just feel like you want to have a strong bench at this time of year, and having premium just makes that bench tougher. You're going to have Bueno or Patterson. You're going to have Bailey, Da Silva, all these really cheap enablers that people seem to like. So I think it's tough. So I think go with Haaland plus Salah. That's what we talked about. If you really don't want Salah, then De Bruyne. But there's not many other options. That's it. Just Haaland and Salah. Stop overthinking it.
Like it. Well, that's probably a good time to finish up. Yes, probably won't see you before Christmas. Have a good one, and everybody out there have a great one. Hopefully have a good Hogmanay too. And if there's anything you think that we are talking nonsense about or talking sense about, let us know. Give us a wee comment, drop us a like.
Cool. Thanks very much for tuning in, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year if we don't speak to you before then.
Haaland